This one looks good. This one looks heavy.
Hi, I'm Celeste Longacre, and I would like to invite you on this early September day to take a walk through my garden with beautiful flowers that are blooming and all the wonderful things that we have as a harvest. This is the harvest time of year, and it represents a lot of work that's happened all through the year and through the summer. And what I think people need to think about is if you really want to have a nice harvest and you really want to have a nice garden, you need to do some planning early. You need to start to think about that now, even if you're going to make your garden bigger next summer, or you are going to have the very first garden, or maybe even just a tomato plant. But it's time to start thinking about it now. Well, a compost pile is something that can be started anytime. Really, all you need is a space. You don't even need to have it enclosed, but it's kind of nice to have it enclosed because then you don't have to worry about wild animals getting into it. But what you do is you take your kitchen scraps and some of your weeds that aren't going to seed, and you put them all in the compost pile, and you let it sit for a year, sometimes 2. You might want to turn it during the year at some point, and it turns into this beautiful, rich, gorgeous, luscious, wonderful, beautiful dirt that your plants are going to absolutely love. I also add some chicken manure to my compost, and I do turn it over once or twice. And the plants absolutely love it. You have to feed your plants, and this is the best thing to feed your plants in the whole world. Lettuce is something that I plant all year long. It's early September, and usually by early September most gardens don't have any lettuce left because they planted it in May, and it's already gone by and gone to seed. But what I do is I put lots and lots of seeds down, and I cover it with compost, and I water it well, and I keep it watered well until it comes up, and then I thin. And as I thin, you know, the first teeny weeny little thinnings go to the chickens, but once it gets to be about the size of a large soup spoon, I start to bring it in and eat it. So you'll see it's all pretty thick in here, but you can pull out the whole plant and take off the root, and you've got some really nice lettuce. And if it was later in the day, if the dew wasn't still on it, I would put it right into a pan of water to keep it wet, because if it isn't wet, as soon as the sun hits it, it's going to wilt. So this is my pepper patch. Peppers are kind of fussy. They are really particular about what they like, and they didn't really like it this summer. I'm not 100% sure why that is true, but I think it was too hot. Peppers like it in the low 80s. They don't really like it hot. You'd think that they would like it hot because they seem to be like a hot weather plant, but they really like it a little cooler than we had this summer. But you do get nice, beautiful red peppers, or orange peppers or yellow peppers, or a green pepper is just an unripe pepper. So it will turn to another color once it ripens, and it will also get a whole lot sweeter. I'm not a real big fan of green peppers, but I really like the sweet peppers once they turn. And they're one of the easiest things to fix because you can just cut them up and put them in the freezer. You don't have to do anything special to it. Tomatoes are a lot of people's very, very favorite garden vegetable, and I think that they have that distinction for a very, very good reason, because there is nothing like a fresh tomato that you have allowed to really, really ripen, really, really deep, dark red, and picked from your garden, and slice it up and put it in a sandwich or put it in a salad, or just have the tomato. I eat tomatoes like apples when they're coming into season because I just love them so much. But they do need to be staked, as you can see. So when you have the plants, you want to make sure that you have something for them to hold them up. And I use some material because string is too small. It would cut the plants. You can read all about this in my book, Celeste Garden Delights, and it has from A to Z about how to grow tomatoes. But tomatoes are definitely something that people like to have in their garden. And even if you don't really have space for a garden, but you have space for a couple of plants, you might want to think about planting a tomato. But if you plant it in a pot, get the biggest pot that you can find, because they do have a very, very large root system, so they need a really big pot. A really nice crop because they keep so well in the root cellar. You know, if you have a root cellar and you properly prepare your carrots for the root cellar, they will keep until next July. So, you know, your next batch of carrots will be well growing and ready for thinning by the time you actually need to find another carrot. So you won't have to buy them. They are a difficult crop to start. So if you've never had a garden before, I would not recommend trying to grow carrots because it takes them 10 to 14 days to germinate, and that very top of the soil has to be wet that whole time. There are days in May when I plant these carrots that I will have to water the carrots 4 and 5 times in one day to get them to germinate. So it's not an easy crop to grow. And then once you've got them in, you need to thin them, and you need to keep thinning them because everybody needs room to grow. So you want to just make sure and go along and see, you know, who's getting a little crowded. And take the smaller one, because even though the smaller one, you know, especially in the beginning, the bigger one is looking better because there's some size to it and you're trying to make a lunch or a dinner, you need to take the smaller one because the big carrots are going to get a lot bigger than the small carrots ever will. And the bigger they are, the better they keep. So you want to encourage your carrots to get nice and big so that they will keep for almost a year in the root cellar. Okay, beets. Beets are a lot easier to grow than carrots. They're not so fussy as far as their germination, and they will also keep until next July in the root cellar. So you want to make sure that you get them, you know, whenever you plant anything, you have to keep the surface of the soil wet, because the whole life of that plant is just in that little seed. The seed doesn't have any roots that go down yet. But once the roots go down, you can give them a little bit of time in between waterings, and you also want to always thin. So you want to look around and say, oh, or you can even feel, especially if you have nice gloves on, I can feel these two beets are bumping up against each other, which means one of them has to come out. And what I do is I take the smaller one, because you know, the bigger ones are going to get bigger than the smaller ones ever will, and the bigger they are, the better they keep. So, and the beet greens are another good thing to eat because there's actually more vitamins and minerals in the greens than they are in the beets. But beets are really a powerhouse of nutrition, so it's a good thing to have in the garden. You can even freeze some of the greens if you want. What I do when I go to freeze the greens is I break them into small pieces. I steam them in a pot, turning them, so that everybody gets a little bit of the steam. And then I put the beets into one bowl, and I put that bowl into another bowl of ice water. That way you don't lose the vitamins and the minerals in the water. If you just put the leaves into the water, it's the ice water itself, you would lose the vitamins and minerals. But you keep turning it and you let it cool down. Then you put it in a bag and you put it in the freezer. And they're wonderful. Beet greens are wonderful in quiches or stir fries or soups. And even if you make a soup stock, it's a good idea to put in some greens because vitamins and minerals are water soluble, and so they will go into the stock. Well, I have two different types of kale planted here. Kale is actually a really easy plant to grow. Just about anybody can grow some kale. These are actually plants that I bought. This is one kind of kale and this is another kind. This is Red Russian. And kale makes wonderful kale chips in the summertime. And you can freeze kale. I freeze kale the same way that I do the beet greens. I'll steam it, I break it into pieces, or sometimes I don't even bother to break it into pieces. I just put it into a steamer and make sure I turn it all so that everything gets a little bit of steam. And then I put it into a bowl, and I put that bowl into another bowl that has ice water in it. And I like to have some kale in my freezer because when I make a soup stock, I like to make sure that I have some kind of greens that have lots of vitamins and minerals in them to go into the stock. Because I discovered over 30 years ago that if my husband and I have a couple of bowls of my homemade soup stock a week, we have no problems with our joints. And if I forget to eat the soup after a while, my knees really start to bother me. And my husband, who doesn't even like soup, will say, can we get some soup? And he notices the difference right away. But when I make my stock, I cook it very, very low. You don't want it to be a rolling boil, just a very gentle boil. I cook it for about 48 hours, so 2 days. And I throw in everything I can think of. I put in a little piece of good quality liver. I put in beets and carrots and onion. I put in chicken feet, because the highest amount of the gelatin in a chicken is in the feet, F-E-E-T. And I'll put in some greens and cook it again at a very low temperature for 2 days. Then I strain all of that out because vitamins and minerals are water soluble, so they come from the bones that you're using, and you can use almost any kinds of bones: chicken, turkey, beef, lamb, and they go into the soup itself. And then you can either just drink the stock, or you can use it as a sauce, thicken it up with a little arrowroot and make like a Chinese meal, sort of stir fry. Or you can make a real soup and add other vegetables and rice or beans or whatever you want. Or you can just heat it up and drink the stock. But it's very, very good for us. It's very, very healthy. So this is my cabbage patch. I have some very nice green storage cabbage onions, and I have some red cabbage and some Brussels sprouts. And you'll probably notice that I have some marigolds planted in the bed with the cabbages. If you plant marigolds with any of the brassicas, so that's the Brussels sprouts, the cabbages, the broccoli, you have very few of the cabbage moth, little green worms. If you don't, you probably will have lots of little green worms. I even plant them with the kale. But the cabbages I mostly use to make sauerkraut or kimchi, which is a fermented food. And actually the vitamin C in sauerkraut is 10 times more available to your body than it is if you just eat the cabbage. So you're increasing the vitamin C value by fermenting it 10 times. And fermented foods, I think, are a missing piece in most Americans' diet because our ancestors fermented everything. That was the way that they preserved things. They fermented their mayonnaise and their ketchup and their pickles and their relishes, and they did the sauerkraut, and they would eat that every single day. And fermented foods not only have digestive enzymes that help us to digest our food, but they're chock-a-block loaded with probiotics. And I think probiotics are something that, our gut biome is missing these probiotics, and it's missing these digestive enzymes. Enzymes are kind of like the spark plugs of life because you can't utilize any of those vitamins and minerals without enzymes. And we have just kind of a limited number of enzymes, so it's really nice if we can increase their number in our diet. I would like to show you a really quick and easy way to increase the probiotics and the enzymes in your diet, and that is with fruit kvass. Page 105 in my book talks extensively about fruit kvass and how to do it, but I'd like to show you just a little bit of that. About today are just a very few things that are actually in my book, Celeste Garden's Delights. This has a complete volume of how to live more in tune with the earth and how to live more sustainably. It can save you lots of money if you know how to do things like plant a garden or ferment foods or keep backyard chickens. We do have backyard chickens, and they're busy out there laying eggs and poking around in their big run. But you can get my book on Amazon, or you can get it through the local bookstores that have it. And there's many different things in here, and it tells you all about fermenting foods. It tells you all about, the year and when to plant things and when to harvest things, how to build a root cellar, how to put things in the root cellar. All of these topics are very well covered in my book. And we did talk a little bit about fermenting, and I wanted to show you a very quick and easy way that you can come up with your own probiotics. And this is a ferment that I started yesterday. It's actually a watermelon ferment. And my family was here yesterday, so we ate the watermelon, and then we saved the seeds and we saved the rind, and we put them in a jar. And we added a teaspoon of salt. This is a half-a-gallon jar. We added a teaspoon of salt and filled it up with water that doesn't have any chlorine or fluoride or anything bad in it, leaving a little headspace. Cover goes on tight, and it sits on the counter for 2 days. Shake it several times a day. Let the gases out once in a while. And after 2 days, I strain out the fruit and I put it in the refrigerator, and then I add just a splash to every glass of water that I drink all day long. I've been doing this for about 4.5 years, and since I started doing this, I haven't actually been sick once. So I think it's the probiotics that are coming into me. And it's all detailed in my book how to do it. If you're not used to ferments, you want to start very slow, like maybe just a teaspoon a day to start and work your way up. But now I drink probably one of these a week. And as you can see, this is basically free. Really, all I had to buy was the salt, because we ate the watermelon, like you make a pumpkin pie and you have some pumpkin left over. You can do it with pumpkin. It doesn't have to be fruit. You can do it with dried fruit, raisins, dandelion greens, dandelions, whatever you have around. And the more different things that you can actually make a kvass with, the more different kinds of microorganisms, beneficial microorganisms, you're going to add to your gut, and your gut is going to be very happy. Had a nice little journey through the garden today. We've actually gone and seen the compost pile. That's something that people can start right away. We've looked at the peppers, and we've looked at the carrots, and we've looked at the beets, and we've looked at the cabbages. And I would encourage people to take some steps and to start to try to do things for yourself. If you don't want to do a garden yourself, you can contact your local farmers. There's still plenty of time to get stuff from the local farmers, and you can get deals when you get things in season from the local farmers. And that way you'll be knowing where your food comes from, because I think it's more and more important. Every day that goes by, more and more bad stuff is really getting put into the general food supply, and you don't want to be eating that, because it's not healthy. It's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for your kids, not healthy for your grandkids. And backyard chickens, they're in my book as well, and they're not that difficult, really, and they give you wonderful, beautiful eggs that you can use. I also have recipes in my book about how to make fermented mayonnaise and how to make kimchi and fruit kvass, things that I make all the time. to get this book is because it really tells you step by step how to do things. It's a step-by-step guide to gardening. It's a step-by-step guide to putting things away. I have canning in here, freezing, drying, building a root cellar, putting things in the root cellar, fermenting. I have interviews with other people, soil specialists and people that farm animals, and 4-H person. So there's lots and lots of information in here, and it's not an expensive book. It just retails for $19.95, and it's everything that you will need to learn how to be a little bit more self-sufficient and a little bit more sustainable. Sustainability is something we all really need to think about because we need to be living a lifestyle that is sustainable. So I want to thank you for coming on this journey with me, and happy gardening.